Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Congressman Jeff Crank. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me.
Brittany, thanks for having me.
I'm excited for the conversation today, and I appreciate the time. This is your first term in Congress. You were elected to represent Colorado's 5th District. You've already hit the ground running. So to start off the conversation, how have the first few weeks in the House been going?
Well, it's certainly exciting. It's been, it's a great honor to get elected to Congress and to serve your constituents, to have your neighbors send you to Washington, D.C. to be their voice is really exciting. But, it's also just an exciting time to be in Washington when you think about it. Of all the time in my lifetime, I think 2024 would be the most exciting time to be elected to Congress. So obviously we're making massive change with President Trump and all that he's doing, but also, just in Congress to have the majority in the House and the Senate. This is just an incredible opportunity for us, and I'm just honored and blessed to be a part of it.
Let's talk about that a little more because, as you said, it is a good time to be a Republican in federal government because you have control of the House, you have control of the Senate. President Trump is in the White House. Although, as we saw last night, which we will get into, the House does have a slim GOP majority, but you do control all levers of the government. So what's on the docket for you in this term?
Well, and you're right. We'll have to probably remind ourselves many times about how great it is to be in the majority when we have nights like last night where obviously we just passed by one vote. But it's a slim majority, and we just have a lot of work to do to stick together. And if we stick together, I think as a caucus, we can have some really great things. Look, I got elected to help secure the border, just like President Trump did. I ran on the exact same issues that the president ran on, securing the border, helping fix high inflation and fix our economy, renewing of the tax cuts that the president did in his first term. So I'm committed to making sure that those things happen. And I think the way we make those things happen on the economy certainly is to get government spending under control. And the way we have to do that, of course, is to find efficiencies in government. And, I'm sort of amazed that there are people out there who claim that somehow you have to cut to the bone when you really don't. I mean, to claim that there's not inefficiencies and waste and fraud and abuse in government, the American people don't believe that. They know that we can do better and we intend to do better.
Let's talk about the economy and the budget now, because last night a vote barely eked across the line for the budget framework. And I'm curious as to what those conversations looked like within your own party, because I know as someone who represents a district in Colorado, your constituents' needs are much different than Florida, much different than other states. So how did you come together with other Republicans and decide, hey, this is a compromise, this is what we need to get done?
Yeah, well, we know what we're doing is the right thing to do. First and foremost, there's lots being made from people on the left talking about Medicaid, but the reality is we're cutting waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid. In Colorado right now, you can get on Medicaid for under 90 days, so 89 days you can come in Colorado, get on Medicaid, and not show proof of citizenship. So you can be illegally here in the United States, and for 89 days, the citizens of the United States are going to pick up your health insurance. If we cut that out, it would save billions across the United States. Those are the kinds of reforms that are common sense, and you can do that without hurting services to people who legitimately are entitled to get that care. So those are the kind of reforms that we're talking about. Last night we had a vote on the budget resolution. It was a close vote. I was excited to see it was, all of the Republicans minus one Republican who voted with the Democrats to increase taxes by $4.5 trillion and to not root out waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid. So, I think as a party, we're doing well. We got to stick together and push this down the track. And we got to get out and tell the American people the truth about this reconciliation package and not let the others who oppose it, really drive the narrative.
Medicaid was a huge point of contention, as you noted. It was one of the headlines coming out of this resolution. And the Energy and Commerce Committee, which manages policy surrounding Medicare and Medicaid, is tasked now with finding over $800 billion in cuts. President Trump today vowed that Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security would not be touched. But when you're talking about fraud in Medicaid and waste in Medicaid, how is that over $800 billion? I mean, what does that look like? How do you get that number without slashing those types of programs?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the job of the Energy and Commerce Committee now, to go do the hard work of crafting this package. The chairman of that committee has assured the Republicans in the caucus, and he's assured me personally, that there's lots of ways to go at and get that money out of Medicaid and out of the system without impacting folks who are on Medicaid and who need Medicaid. And so, whether it's cutting out middlemen that maybe are making a nice profit off of the government by the current laws and exploiting those current laws, or whether it is things like I mentioned, illegals being on, how about requiring work requirements for able-bodied recipients and things like that. These are all things that will save money, and it will be a better value for the American people. And frankly, it's a better deal for Medicaid. Here's the bottom line. To the people who want to fuss and want to say, well, we shouldn't cut Medicaid or we shouldn't cut here or there. Well, where should we cut? Because we're almost $36 trillion in debt now. And I would just say, if people who can, it's easy to say, well, you can't cut there and you can't cut there, but that doesn't change the fact that we have to cut somewhere. And so we have to figure out how to make government smaller, because the federal government has been too big for too many years.
Sounds like you're a fan of cuts, because you're saying, hey, we have to cut somewhere. Something has to give here. It sounded like, and we'll get into this, but correct me if I'm wrong, that you are a fan of DOGE, a fan of making the government more efficient, finding out this wasteful spending. This resolution that Republicans voted for will hike up the debt limit, though, by $4 trillion. So how do you square that away, and how will we get that back?
Well, first of all, the budget resolution is a minimum. I do believe that we're going to find more savings, and we're going to get more revenue off of the tax cuts. I mean, a lot of this stuff will be scored by CBO. CBO traditionally they don't use dynamic scoring. They don't make the assumption that if you lower capital gains tax rates, for instance, that it brings in more revenue to the government because there's more economic activity and the economy booms. They've been wrong time after time again. They were wrong when they passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. They underestimated the effects and the revenue that would be brought in under the tax cuts, and they're probably going to be wrong again on this one. So first of all, we've got to look at it from a holistic standpoint, and we do have to find ways to save money. So I think we're going to come in with more revenue off of some of those tax cuts coming in than will be predicted by CBO. But also, the cuts that are being proposed are going to be the minimum cuts that CBO says. So I think the cuts will actually be higher overall. The amount of revenue that we save, or the amount of expenditures that we cut, will be more over time, because I think CBO is not estimating those properly as well.
This budget resolution was described as the Trump blueprint of his agenda, of the Trump administration's agenda. I would love to dive into what the president and his administration have been up to over the past month or so and get your reaction. Obviously, there's a laundry list of the actions and measures that the administration and the president himself have enacted in the past month. Here's just a list of a few. He signed executive orders on immigration and border security. We've seen cuts and layoffs through the DOGE department. The United States, along with Russia, North Korea, and a handful of other countries, voted against a UN resolution which condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Tariffs were used as negotiating tactics and also slapped on China. The president has made a host of different comments comments on the United States either buying, reclaiming, or taking over different territories, including Greenland, the Panama Canal, and Gaza. And many of his cabinet nominees who have faced a controversial or rocky road to get confirmed have in fact been confirmed and have hit the ground running in their roles. So overall, and I know I am definitely missing a few actions, if not many here, but what are your thoughts on overall the administration's first moves?
Well, first of all, I'd give him an A. If I had to grade the president, I'd give him an A. I think he's doing a great job. The American people wanted a change agent. That's why they voted for Donald Trump. I mean, if you look at what happened in this election, I think it surprised many that Donald Trump drew the number of votes that he did and won as handily as he did. And it's because the American people wanted change. They wanted to shake the system up. And immigration is the greatest example of that. I mean, I just had a meeting, was talking about the immigration numbers, and, crossings have gone down from 6,000 a day that they're catching at the border to about 200 people a day. And we're not done. I mean, that's in a month. The president has done that. That is radical change. The president has delivered on the things that he said he was going to do at the border. But that's just one of the many things. Look, the president throws a lot of ideas out there to discuss, and I think it's good. There's a lot of discussions we're having right now that we have never had in this country, and we're having them because of the president. When it comes to tariffs and things like that, the president oftentimes has used them. We saw this with, Colombia and other places where he's used them as a bargaining chip and said, look, if you don't come to the bargaining table with us, we're going to impose this tariff. And you see time and time again that people have come to the table and cut a deal. You even kind of see it with Ukraine and the rare earth minerals agreement too, where the president sort of shakes the system a little bit, and then he gets folks to come and negotiate with him, and we get a better deal for the United States. I think that's what people like about Donald Trump, is that he's willing to do those sorts of things.
Speaking of shaking the system, something that is pretty unprecedented is Elon Musk and his involvement with DOGE. He's the face of it, which was tasked with finding wasteful federal spending and slashing it. And I've talked to many of your colleagues about this on both sides of the aisle. They've commented anything from they like a good outside perspective to maybe he's a little bit recklessly cutting jobs to perhaps Donald Trump's not even the real president, it's Elon Musk, and have been really critical of him there. What are your thoughts on Elon Musk and DOGE's work?
Yeah, well, President Obama tried to cut waste, fraud, and abuse, and he had people who he appointed to go out and find that. And I didn't see people, gnashing their teeth over that one. So it's kind of funny that all of a sudden they're doing it over Elon Musk. Look, not everybody that the president appoints is confirmed by the United States Senate. The president has a national security advisor who isn't confirmed by the United States Senate, but they serve as an advisor to him on national security. Doesn't seem unreasonable to me that the president could have an advisor who comes in and tells him how to make government more efficient and lean. I think that's a good thing. I mean, I can't believe we're at the point in America where we've got people who are actually defending like waste, fraud, and abuse and saying, well, this is crazy, we're cutting to the bone. I just got out of a hearing and had one of my colleagues talk about how Elon Musk had fired the one person at Yosemite National Park who had the key to the Yosemite National Park. And I just was stunned by their comments, and I looked at him and I said, I didn't know Yosemite National Park was closed. Oh, it's not closed. And it's not closed because he wasn't the only person who had a key. I mean, we can go out and we can find efficiencies in government, and we should do that. Democrats and Republicans should welcome that opportunity. We have to take care in the way that we do it. We need to treat people, and that includes federal employees, with respect, and do it with sort of due process and those sorts of things. So we want to make sure that we're treating people well, but at the same time, it is high time. Again, we're $36 trillion in debt. We have a lot of work to do.
Democrats I've talked to have agreed, hey, I like efficiency. I want to cut waste and fraud where there is some. What they've taken issue with in my conversations is that Elon Musk, they think, is using more of a hatchet approach instead of a scalpel, maybe firing people a little slapdash, having to rehire some people back. Is that something you agree with?
Well, look, I'm not going to say that anybody does anything perfectly all the time. I'm sure that there are mistakes that have been made here or there. But overall, when you're $36 trillion in debt, a scalpel isn't enough. I mean, you probably do need to get a bigger tool out of your toolbox than a scalpel when you're $36 trillion in debt. We spend far more than we take in every day in the United States of America. We've got to come to the grips with that. And again, I would just go back to the people who are complaining about DOGE and that they were finding waste, fraud, and abuse. It's okay to do that. But again, with that kind of debt, what would you cut? What are the things? Because we can't keep, can't sustain the debt and the deficit that we have every year. So what are your alternatives, I would say, to those who want to criticize this? They don't really generally have alternatives. They just want to defend massive government spending.
Congressman, I feel really lucky in my conversations. I've spoken to a few first termers and some Republicans, some Democrats, and the feeling amongst Republicans that I've sensed is that a feeling of optimism, that you even said this is the best time to be elected, end of 2024. It looks like you hit the ground running in this first term, but I want to look to the future just a bit. When you're looking past this first term, when you're looking past President Trump's second term, the future of the GOP, what does that look like to you?
Well, and look, I mean, I think it's a great time, as I mentioned. I think it's a great time to be in Congress, but that doesn't mean we don't have challenges. We have a lot of challenges. So, we have a very thin majority, and getting things through is going to be difficult. There's going to be tough votes to cast. So as I mentioned, we've got to stick together and really focus on what's best for the American people. But moving beyond that, I mean, I really think that President Trump, in many ways, has helped realign the Republican Party and shown that the Republican Party is the party for the working class and people. I think on the left sometimes Democrats have become this party of elitists who believe that it's okay to shut something down to save a species that they believe is endangered, even though they may not be endangered. That's more important than the livelihood and the jobs that people have. Or you see energy mandates and things like that. They've got they're focused on that rather than focused on the high utility bills that causes in average everyday people's lives. I think you've seen a big realignment in the number of minority voters that are now voting for the Republican Party, and Donald Trump gets a lot of credit for that because he's really sort of realigned the party and the whole entire political system. So it's going to be very interesting. I mean, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, if you're a student of politics and of history, it's going to be really interesting to watch over the next several years.
And it's an interesting time to cover politics, certainly. My last question to you, because it did pique my attention. I know that, or I'm sure based on my conversations with Republicans, immigration is a slam dunk issue for you. You seemingly all agree on that. What are those tough votes down the pike that you're talking about? Where do you think you'll find a tougher time agreeing with your own party?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's going to be issues about debt and what do we do with debt? I mean, you talked about additional debt. There's discussions now that if we get if DOGE finds more savings, should we give some of that to people or should we put that towards deficit reduction? I'm a believer in reducing debt and reducing the size and scope of government. So those are some things that inside the party we'll have disagreements on. But look, I know this, we're committed. The vast majority of people in the Republican conference in the House are committed to making sure that we stick together as a team. And if we don't do that, we're just not going to be successful in helping President Trump advance his agenda. But as you saw last night, I think it's very apparent that most of the people in our conference are laser focused on that. There'll be other issues too. There are states in Congress where we have representatives from that have the SALT tax issue, state and local tax deduction issue. That's not an issue in my state, but there are members from high tax states like New York and California and others who are Republican members who have to find some relief to that SALT issue for them. So those are some of the things that we'll just have to negotiate, but we're going to get there because we have to. We have to save America.
Congressman, I really appreciate the time today. I appreciate the conversation, and thank you so much for joining me. You are welcome back anytime.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and we're excited and looking to the future.